On April 15, 1985, in the bright lights of Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas, the world witnessed a fight that would be etched forever in boxing history. A fight so explosive, so relentless, and so violent that even today it stands as a benchmark for brutality and courage inside the squared circle. And this is the story of Marvin Hagler versus Thomas Hearns, better known as The War, the most violent 3 rounds in boxing. To understand the magnitude of that night, we have to first look at the men who entered the ring, both champions in their own right, both fierce competitors with fire in their eyes, and both carrying the weight of expectation and legacy on their shoulders. Marvin Hagler, known as Marvelous Marvin Hagler, had carved his way through the middleweight division with grit and consistency. He was a man of determination, a fighter who had waited years for recognition, often overlooked in favor of flashier names, but once he claimed the middleweight title in 1980, he held on to it with an iron grip. Hagler was not the kind of champion who relied on hype. He was a blue-collar warrior, bald-headed, stone-faced, and relentless. He could fight on the inside, he could box from the outside, and he could adapt to whatever style was placed before him. By the time he stepped into the ring against Hearns, Hagler was already a respected and feared champion, a man who had defended his title successfully multiple times and was hungry to prove himself against the most dangerous challenger of his era. On the other side stood Thomas Hearns, nicknamed the Hitman, tall, rangy, and armed with one of the most destructive right hands in boxing history. Hearns had come to fame in the welterweight division, where his knockout power left opponents sprawled across the canvas. He was part of the golden generation of the 1980s, alongside legends like Sugar Ray Leonard, Roberto Duran, and Marvin Hagler himself. Hearns had faced Leonard in a historic fight in 1981, and though he lost that night, he showed his warrior spirit and cemented himself as one of the most dangerous men in boxing. By the time he stepped into the ring with Hagler, Hearns had bulked up to middleweight, and fans wondered if his devastating power would carry with him. The build-up to the fight was electric. Fans knew this was not going to be a chess match of jabs and footwork. The personalities alone guaranteed fireworks. Hagler, the stoic warrior with a chip on his shoulder, and Hearns, the explosive knockout artist with bad intentions in every punch. The stage was set, and when fight night came, the crowd of more than 15,000 inside Caesar's Palace knew they were about to witness something unforgettable. The opening bell rang, and instantly the fight exploded into chaos. Forget the feeling-out process that usually begins a championship bout. Hearns came out with his long arms pumping, throwing bombs, and Hagler responded with furious aggression. Within the first 30 seconds, Hearns landed a thunderous right hand that snapped Hagler's head back, a punch that would have ended the night for lesser men. The crowd roared, sensing that something extraordinary was happening. Hagler, rather than retreating, came forward like a bull, unleashing hooks and crosses that had Hearns reeling. The first round was 3 minutes of pure war. Both men stood toe-to-toe, trading blows that echoed through the arena. Hagler dug to the body with vicious hooks, trying to wear down the taller Hearns, while Hearns used his long reach to fire straight rights and whipping hooks that rattled Hagler's head. Blood was flowing, sweat was spraying, and every second felt like it could be the last for either man. The commentary that night, filled with disbelief, called it one of the most incredible rounds in boxing history, and they were right. By the end of the first round, the crowd was on its feet screaming in awe. As the fighters went to their corners, both men were already marked by the violence. Hagler had a cut on his forehead, while Hearns looked shaken, despite having landed some of his best punches. The second round began, and the pace did not slow down. Hagler, determined and relentless, pressed forward, crowding Hearns and refusing to give him the distance he wanted for his long punches. Hearns tried to use his jab and movement, but Hagler's pressure was suffocating. The champion's strategy was simple: get inside the long arms of Hearns, break him down to the body, and force him into a war of attrition. But Hearns was not backing down. He threw blistering combinations that cracked against Hagler's skull, each punch carrying knockout potential. Still, Hagler's granite chin absorbed the punishment, and his relentless engine kept driving him forward. Every exchange drew gasps from the crowd, as each man landed punches that would have dropped most fighters. It was as if neither man had considered defense. Offense was their only weapon, and survival depended on who could endure the most pain. By the end of the second round, both fighters were battered, both breathing heavily, but neither willing to give ground. The anticipation heading into the third round was overwhelming. Fans could not believe the level of violence they had already seen, and yet the fight was far from over. The third round began with the same ferocity. Hagler came out like a man possessed, knowing he could not let Hearns use his reach and jab to settle into a rhythm. He launched a furious attack, driving Hearns backward with combinations to the body and head. Hearns tried to fight back, landing a few clean shots that staggered Hagler momentarily, but the champion's resolve was unbreakable. Midway through the round, Hagler landed a looping right hand that shook Hearns to his core. The challenger stumbled, his legs betraying him. Sensing the end, Hagler unleashed a savage assault, pinning Hearns against the ropes and unloading with both hands. The crowd erupted as Hearns tried desperately to clinch, but Hagler would not be denied. A crushing right hand crashed against Hearns's chin, and the hitman crumbled to the canvas. The referee began the count, but it was clear Hearns was finished. He rose briefly, but his legs were gone, his body unable to continue after such a savage beating. The fight was stopped, and Marvin Hagler had retained his middleweight title in one of the most violent, breathtaking, and unforgettable battles in boxing history. The entire fight had lasted just over 8 minutes, but those 8 minutes gave the world a lifetime of memories. The aftermath of Hagler versus Hearns only added to the legend. Fans and analysts immediately hailed it as one of the greatest fights ever seen. The opening round alone was considered by many to be the greatest single round in boxing history, a round where both men gave everything they had with no thought of tomorrow. For Hagler, the victory cemented his status as one of the greatest middleweights of all time. His toughness, his determination, and his ability to withstand Hearns' power became the stuff of legend. For Hearns, the loss did not diminish his reputation. If anything, his willingness to stand and trade with Hagler, to give everything in the pursuit of victory, elevated his status as one of the most exciting fighters the sport had ever seen. Their fight represented everything that fans love about boxing: courage, drama, and the pure will to win. Decades later, whenever the conversation turns to the greatest fights ever, Hagler versus Hearns is always near the top of the list, a reminder of what happens when two warriors meet with nothing to lose and everything to prove. Even now, clips of those 3 rounds circulate across the internet, inspiring new generations of boxing fans who marvel at the sheer intensity of that battle. It was not just a fight. It was an explosion of human spirit, a clash of wills that transcended sport and entered the realm of legend. And perhaps that is why it endures. For those who were there, it was unforgettable. For those who watch it today, it remains unbelievable. Hagler and Hearns may be gone from the ring, but on that night in Las Vegas, they created a moment that will live forever. A moment where violence and beauty collided under the desert sky. This was the war, the most violent 3 rounds in boxing history, and a story that will never fade. Thank you for watching this deep dive into one of boxing's greatest nights. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts on where Hagler versus Hearns ranks among the all-time classics. And let us know which legendary fight you want us to cover next, because boxing is not just about punches, it is about stories. And this was one of the greatest ever told.